Okay, so Kristen, welcome to our demo, virtual training at ProTech. And what we're going to do is go through a typical, what the setting looks like for a virtual class at ProTech and how it would be to be a student in one of our classes. Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
What I like to do is think in terms of, if you would think with me just for a second, outside of the demo itself, what do we do when we attend a typical class in IT? And I would propose to you that there are really three categories of activity that happen when we go to a typical class. And the first category of activity is that instructors teach concepts by talking to slides. So I have a slide in front of you right now. I've now flipped it, and here's the third slide, and come the fourth. And basically what I'm doing is talking to you about concepts, if you will. Essentially, I can teach you these concepts that I want to teach you as I'm going through the slides. You can hear me fine, and as you have questions, I would like to hear from you also so that we can clear up any questions that you may have. We need audio contact with each other. You need to be able to see my screen. Concept number one taken care of. I've had the opportunity to teach you concepts by talking to slides. Agreed?
Agreed, yes.
Okay. Anything that I may have missed?
So far, I don't think so.
All right. Very good. Now, the second thing that generally happens in a classroom, well, if you think about it, is instructors reinforce the concepts that they've taught by demo. So the instructor will walk over to his or her computer, and they will go ahead and begin to they'll log on to a machine. If it's a Unix or a mainframe class, or they'll start showing you their code if it's, say, a Java class or something like that. And they're demoing then the concepts that they've been able to teach you. So essentially what they do is they walk to their computer that is hooked up to a data show projector, and they begin to demonstrate those concepts. So now not only have you been able to hear them and learn them through the learning that was happening while you were talking to slides, you've been able to see them demonstrated also. That reinforces the concepts. So again, the instructor has a data show projector in the room. In this case, it's essentially a virtual data show projector, so that anything that is on my screen, I can go ahead and show to you. That was my coding scratch pad. If we were in a Word class, I would come over to Word and I would show and tell you about Word. And you can see as I'm typing, and again, we have audio contact with each other, so you can ask me questions and things like that. Concept or category number two taken care of. First, I've taught you the concepts. Now I've reinforced the concepts by demonstration. Agreed?
Agreed, yes.
All right, any questions so far?
So far, I think I understand everything.
All right, now the third category of activity is where the student actually rolls up their sleeves, gets their hands onto a lab computer of some sort, and goes ahead and does the exercises on their own. So a couple of things in this phase. First off, I want to talk about how does an instructor get around the room as far as the lab work is concerned, because that's where the virtual challenge is concerned. What does a good teacher do during lab time? They're available for Q&A so that students might be able to ask them questions. So in order to get around the room virtually, there are ways to do that outside the software. A student could copy and paste a screenshot or their code or something like that into an email and get it off to the teacher. There's a way to do it from within the room, and I've just given you a prompt now to ask you to go ahead and be presenter. So if you would accept that prompt, then we'll be able to see your screen. And now I'm looking at your notepad, and go ahead and type something on your notepad so that we can get the opportunity to see that I can see it. That's good. I can. So effectively, I'm now looking at your screen. So wherever we're having a problem, wherever you are having a problem with your code, I, as the instructor, can see what's going on, and I can help you out and say, well, Kristen, this is where your issue is. You put a period at the end of test, and that should actually be a comma. That way, if you would change it to a comma, you'll be able to go ahead and run your code, and life will be good. So effectively, what I have is a virtual data show projector, and what I've done is I've unplugged this data show projector from my screen, and I've plugged it into your screen, and I can then go ahead and help you out with your code. If you want, with both of these screens, when I'm running the presentation or when you're running the presentation, either one of us can go ahead and type on the other's computer also. I think that's a feature that's little used, so I don't think there's any reason to demonstrate it. The other place that I'd like to go in this demo, as far as labs are concerned, would be to show you just a brief demonstration on how we provide lab machines. We don't always do this. Oftentimes students are running labs on their own computers, but oftentimes, and it's getting more common, where we are hosting computers where the students are doing labs on also. So I'd just like to take you through a demonstration of that too. Okay? In order to do that, we're going to go to our remote access license of WebEx, and I'm going to log into a test computer of ours. So this would be, if I was a student, you would have an ID of remote access something else other than 999. 999 is our test machine. And so how do I log on to that machine? I go ahead and hit connect. And now what I'm doing is I'm accessing a computer from my computer through the internet to one that would have been, if I was actually a student in a class, this computer would have been set up in advance so that all of my labs would be on it, and I would be able to go ahead and run my labs on that computer. Okay. There is a third way that an instructor can get around the room, and that is through direct access to this computer. So if I was a student in this class, I'm now manipulating a computer that is available to me through the internet, and an instructor, if they want, in order to see my screen privately, they could actually come to my computer, because obviously the instructor would know that Tim is logged on to computer 999, so he or she could then come to my computer. I, as a student, would be prompted, and it would say, Joe Smith or Jane Jones or whatever the instructor's name is would like to see your computer. Is that okay? And I would hit the prompt. It would say yes, and then the instructor is basically virtually looking over my shoulder at what's going on my screen so that they could see it. So again, if I could just do a quick review, 3 categories of activity that take place in class. Instructors teach concepts by talking to slide. Instructors reinforce those concepts by showing the students. And then where the learning really takes place is in lab. How does the instructor get around the room virtually? I believe I've showed a couple of those ways, and we've discussed the third one, that is regular email. From my perspective, I've kind of covered the major levels of activity that happen in a virtual class. Questions, comments, or thoughts?
This all seems pretty straightforward to me. So you showed the remote access computer. Do students generally take a class on there, or do they do that on their own desktop?
Both. If a student is accessing his or her own computer, the instructor can get access to that computer by viewing through the webinar, just making that student a presenter. But the answer, quite frankly, is both. Oftentimes, we set up lab computers in our offices that students access through the internet in order to run their labs. Oftentimes, they run labs on their own computers. So the answer to your question is both.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and log out of there. Now, the other thing that I'd like to cover in a demo also is some of the things that are outside of just the software itself. How do we communicate to our students? What's in front of them? Things like that. So a couple of points that I'd like to make. Between 1 and 2 weeks in advance, the student gets an email from us that basically says, you're registered for this class, and here's what we need you to do in advance to get connected, and don't forget to come to class on this date at this time. And then we send out a reminder the week before class. Don't forget, there are typically 2 things that we ask a student to do just to make sure that they're set up and ready, and that would be from the computer that they're going to take class from. Just run a real quick wizard to make sure they don't run into any firewall or other issues, that they'll be able to actually access the virtual training room itself. And then the second thing would be, if they are using our lab machines, a test to be able to make sure, again, there won't be any firewall or other issues in order to be able to get to our lab machine. So we give those instructions. We give a reminder about those instructions. We also ship and we confirm that they've got in advance the course materials. All of our virtual students get a paper copy of the course materials, so that paper copy of the course materials is on their desk as they're taking the class. And we also ship a headset for their PC. We find that many people do have headsets for their telephone. If they're on the telephone a lot, they do not necessarily have headsets for their PC, so we ship those also. So the environment that the student is in, what we ask is, we're doing the best we can by shipping the course materials by paper, etc., to try to make sure it's as much as possible like a typical learning environment that they're used to in a training room with an instructor. The student side of that equation is to do the best that the student can to get themselves away from coworkers, away from family members, so that they can, as closely as possible, simulate actually leaving work and leaving home and getting into a training room with a teacher for a week. Any questions or thoughts on that?
No, I think I understand everything.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is create a virtual experience that is as much as possible like a regular old training experience, everything except the actual physical presence of the teacher, but certainly with the ability for all the computer access necessary and good verbal communication. We should get you real close to what you're used to and go into a physical class. Okay?
Okay.
All right, very good. Any other questions or thoughts or comments?
The students that you've had take these virtual classes so far, what kind of feedback do they usually give about them?
People that come for the first time, quite frankly, are typically surprised at how good it goes. Certainly it's not without its issues. Physical training classes, you have to worry about lighting and temperature. Virtual training classes, you have to worry about power and internet. So there are things that happen. Sometimes the storm goes through the area and the power of the internet goes down. We certainly have seen people recover in very imaginative ways. But generally speaking, again, people that come for the first time are surprised at how easily they can learn in this environment.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. I appreciate your time.
All right, you're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too.